The winter gala unfolded before me like a masterfully woven tapestry of light and deception, a glittering cage where every smile was a performance. I stood apart, a solitary figure near the grand staircase of the Crescent Hall, a vantage point that allowed observation without participation. My pale blonde hair was secured in an intricate updo that had demanded an hour of meticulous effort, a futile armor against the evening's judgments. The silk of my gown, a deep emerald my sister had insisted complemented my eyes, whispered against my skin, a beautiful yet insufficient shield. Around me moved the true inhabitants of this world. Wolves in bespoke suits and gowns that cost more than a year's rent navigated the thrum of conversation with an innate, unshakable belonging. Their laughter was currency, their glances strategic deployments. I did not belong, I never had. The very air was thick tonight, saturated with an electric anticipation and the primal, musk-laden undercurrent of dominance that always permeated royal gatherings. Somewhere within this meticulously curated crowd was the Alpha King himself. I had never seen him. He existed as a legend, a force whispered about in hushed, fearful tones, ruthless, ancient, a sovereign who had forged 6 fractious territories into a unified realm through sheer, indomitable will and strategic genius. They said his gaze alone could shatter a wolf's spirit. I pressed the cool, smooth bass of my untouched champagne flute to my lips, using the sensation to anchor myself in the present. The cloying scent of expensive perfume clashed with the untamed wildness that no amount of civilization could ever fully mask. A restless shift stirred within me, my wolf, a quiet, subdued presence I had long grown accustomed to calming. She was a reflection of myself, gentle where others were fierce, hesitant where they were bold. I soothed her with a thought urging quiet. Emma. The voice sliced through the ambient noise with the precision of a scalpel. My entire body tensed, every muscle locking into a rigid tableau of forced composure. I turned slowly, a careful choreography of movement, willing my expression into a mask of neutral politeness. David stood 3 feet away, a familiar stranger, and he was not alone. Clinging to his arm as if grafted there was Sophia Hartley. Her cascade of dark, perfect curls framed a face of exquisite, predatory beauty. Daughter of the Beta of the Northern Territory, she was everything I was not, confident, powerful, her place in the universe assured by a pristine and influential bloodline. Her wolf, I was certain, was a magnificent creature. Her social standing had never been a question, only a fact. I didn't expect to see you here, David said. His tone held a peculiar note, not quite pity, but skating perilously close to its edge, setting my teeth on edge. Translation: I didn't think someone like you would warrant an invitation. My sister works for the royal household, I replied, my voice low but steady. She secured me a ticket. Sophia's laugh was a delicate, crystalline sound like wind chimes struck with a bit too much force. How sweet, David, didn't you mention Emma was quite the homebody? This spectacle must be utterly overwhelming for her. The words were sugared, but the condescension dripped from them like venom. I had known Sophia's kind my entire life, wolves who could eviscerate you with a smile, whose instincts were honed to find the exact point of greatest insecurity and press. David had the decency to look faintly uncomfortable. Our 8-month relationship had ended 3 weeks prior, shortly after his father's appointment to the royal council. Suddenly, a woman from an obscure family with a docile wolf no longer fit the trajectory of his ascendant social climb. Emma's stronger than she looks, David offered, but it sounded less like a defense and more like an apology for my very presence. She simply prefers quieter settings, don't you, Em? The old nickname now felt like a trespass, and intimacy revoked. I prefer authenticity, I said, meeting his gaze directly for the first time, but we don't always get what we prefer. A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, or a ghost of recognition passed over his features. But before he could formulate a response, the energy in the vast hall underwent a profound transformation. Conversation died not with a silence, but in a wave. A ripple of stillness spread outward from the main entrance, smothering sound in its path. Even the orchestra faltered, the melody dissolving into discordant notes before ceasing entirely. Compelled by the collective tension, I turned with the rest of the assembly, and my breath lodged in my throat. He stood in the cavernous doorway, not merely a man, but an embodiment of formidable authority. Every instinct I possessed screamed in primal warning to avert my eyes, to make myself infinitesimally small, to become part of the scenery. The Alpha King was imposingly tall, with a breadth of shoulder that strained the elegant black suit, suggesting the formal attire was a temporary concession, a cage for a far wilder nature. His hair was the deep shade of a moonless midnight, swept back from a face of severe, stark angles and a dangerous, austere beauty. But it was his eyes that held me captive across the impossible distance. A pale, luminous silver, they scanned the crowd with the chilling, comprehensive focus of a predator assessing its territory. Raw power emanated from him in palpable waves, a psychic tide I could almost taste, hints of cold smoke, winter storms, and something profoundly, unsettlingly wild. It made my own gentle wolf whimper deep within, pressing against my ribs in a confusion that felt oddly like recognition. "Goddess," Sophia breathed beside me, her grip on David's arm tightening to the point of possession. "He's magnificent." Magnificent was too benign a word, awe-inspiring, terrifying, absolute. He moved into the room, and the sea of wolves parted before him as if moved by an unseen force, heads bowing in a mix of reverence and deep-seated fear. A man nearly as imposing followed 2 steps behind his beta, face marked by scars that narrated a violent history. "They say he's never taken a mate," Sophia continued, her hushed voice thrumming with avaricious curiosity. "Centuries old and still unmated, every alpha family has tried to match a daughter to him. He doesn't pursue political alliances through the mating bond," David recited, as if from a studied text. "He selects consorts occasionally, but never retains them. Rumor suggests he finds most disappointing. I should have looked away, should have returned my attention to the champagne flute, to the floor, to anything but the devastating figure commanding the room. Yet a force I could not name held me rooted, watching as he acknowledged greetings with minimal, almost dismissive gestures. Then, impossibly, his gaze swept across the crowd and found mine. The crowded hall might have emptied. The stuttering music, the resumption of nervous whispers, Sophia's running commentary, all faded into a distant hum. There was only the searing intensity of that silver gaze pinning me in place. A sensation like a static charge raced over my skin, a simultaneous thrill of heat and a cold spike of fear. He stopped mid-sentence with an elderly counselor, his attention completely, utterly derailed. I could not break the connection. It felt like being speared by lightning, held fast by something vast and ancient and utterly incomprehensible. Deep inside, my wolf surged, not in her usual fearful retreat, but with a sudden, shocking strength. It was not fear, it was a response, an answer. "Emma," David's voice sounded leagues away. "Are you all right? You've gone pale." The Alpha King moved, not toward the raised dais prepared for him, not toward the cluster of high-ranking nobles vying for notice. He cut through the crowd with a single-minded purpose, and that purpose was a direct line to where I stood. "Oh, my goddess," Sophia whispered, a sharp, excited inhalation. "He's coming this way. David, straighten your tie. We must make an impression. Your father will want a full account." But when the Alpha King came to a halt before our small group, his focus did not waver to David, nor did it acknowledge Sophia, despite her flawless presentation and prestigious lineage. Those wintermoon eyes remained fixed on me with an intensity that made the very air feel thin. You, he said, his voice was rougher than I had imagined, grained with age and authority, and edged with something that might have been stark surprise. What is your name? My mouth was desiccated parchment. Around us I could feel the weight of hundreds of stares, the collective bewilderment trying to compute why the sovereign of 6 territories was addressing the anonymous blonde woman in the corner. Emma, I managed, the word a mere breath of sound. Emma Thorne, Emma, he repeated. My name in his mouth sounded like a decree, a foundational truth. His nostrils flared slightly, a subtle, shocking intimacy. He was scenting me. Heat flooded my neck, a traitorous blush. You are unmated. It was not a question, but a statement drawn from the air itself. I nodded, acutely conscious of David's rigid posture beside me. Something shifted in the Alpha King's expression, a swift, decisive satisfaction. He extended his hand, palm upward, in a gesture that was both a royal summons and something far more disarming. Dance with me. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. This did not happen. Alpha Kings did not dance with anonymous wolves from inconsequential families. They did not notice those who lived in the shadows. I began to form a refusal, an excuse, but he took a single step closer. The sheer magnitude of his presence, the aura of command, obliterated all coherent thought. That was not a request, Emma Thorne, he said, his voice a low vibration meant only for my ears. The steel beneath the silk was unmistakable. Then, unexpectedly, a hint of something like amusement tempered his gaze. Though I should perhaps practice asking rather than commanding, will you dance with me? My hand moved of its own volition, settling into his. His skin was furnace-warm, his palm etched with the calluses of a warrior, belying the refined setting. He drew me toward the dance floor with a possessiveness that set my pulse racing, and in my periphery I registered David's stunned expression, Sophia's gaping mouth, the laser focus of the entire assembly. The orchestra, with impeccable timing, swept into a waltz. He drew me close, closer than propriety allowed, one hand firm at the small of my back, the other enveloping mine. At this proximity, I could see flecks of darker charcoal within the silver of his eyes, could smell the clean, sharp scent of cedar and night air and the unique, essential signature of him. It stirred my wolf into a soft, confused whine of longing. You are trembling, he observed as he led us into motion. He was a skilled dancer, his lead so confident it felt effortless to follow. You are the Alpha King, I said, as if that explained the tremor in my bones. Darius, he corrected, and are you terrified of me? I should have lied, offered a polite, empty assurance, but the ancient depth in his eyes seemed to demand and even reward honesty. Deception felt more dangerous. Of this, I admitted softly, of everyone watching, of not understanding why you, I bit off the rest, pressing my lips together. Why I what? His thumb traced a faint, deliberate circle on the silk at my back, sparking a line of fire along my spine. Why I crossed a ballroom of scheming wolves to reach you, why I hold you instead of enduring another tedious discourse on border tariffs. I gave a slight, mute nod. He was quiet for a turn, guiding us smoothly past another couple who nearly stumbled in their haste to yield space. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, a private rumble between us. Because when I entered this room, saturated with the sense of ambition and desperation, I caught a different note. Honeysuckle, rain, and something beneath, elusive, undefinable. He paused, his hand tightening almost imperceptibly at my waist. And when I found its source, you were not looking at me with calculation, fear, or avarice. You were simply present, real. Do you have any idea how rare that is? My heart hammered against the cage of my ribs. I am nobody, I whispered, the old defense rising automatically. My family holds no standing, no territory. My wolf is faint. I cannot comprehend what you might possibly. Your former companion, Darius interrupted, his voice acquiring a subtle edge. The one you stood with. He is the fool who relinquished you. The heat in my cheeks intensified. Of course he had noted David. He made a practical decision, I said, a hollow defense of a wound still fresh. His family required him to possess greater perception, Darius stated flatly. Then his expression shifted into something more deliberately focused. Is he watching now? Pardon, your former mate, Darius clarified, his gaze holding mine. Does he observe what he discarded? He drew me even nearer until the heat of his body was a palpable force against mine, until the space for pretense vanished. Is he witnessing his loss? I did not need to look. I could feel the weight of David's stare and the stares of every other being in the hall like a physical pressure. Yes, I breathed. Darius's smile was that of a wolf contemplating its prize. He leaned down slowly, giving me every opportunity to retreat, to stop this madness before it spiraled beyond recall. But I was paralyzed, caught in the gravity of his presence, my wolf pushing insistently against my skin with a vitality I had not felt in years. His lips met mine. It was not a gentle meeting. It was a claiming, a declaration made before the entire hierarchy of our world. His hand cradled the nape of my neck, fingers threading into the carefully arranged hair at my updo's base. I heard the faint scatter of hairpins on marble as my styled coiffure began its surrender. My own hands, which had hovered uncertainly near his shoulders, fisted in the fine wool of his jacket, clinging as if he were the only solid point in a spinning universe. When he finally drew back, his eyes had darkened to a stormy, molten mercury. The grand ballroom was utterly, profoundly silent, not a rustle of fabric, not a clink of crystal. Let him see, Darius murmured, his lips brushing my temple, the words for me alone. Let them all see the face of folly. Then louder, addressing the room without ever looking away from me, the gala will continue, enjoy your evening. It was a clear dismissal. The orchestra leapt back to life with comical haste, conversation resumed in a frantic, buzzing wave. But the attention remained, a focused weight upon us. Come with me, Darius said. This time it was not a command. A question lived within the words, an offering of choice I should have refused, should have extricated myself from this surreal predicament before it consumed me entirely. But my lips still tingled from the startling pressure of his, and my wolf was alight with a strange, eager insistence. All right, I whispered. His hand settled at the small of my back, guiding me through the parting crowd with the same unwavering purpose he had displayed earlier. I caught a final glimpse of David's face, pale and shocked, and of Sophia, her beautiful features contorted with something like furious disbelief. Darius led me through a discreet side door into a hushed corridor lined with stern portraits of his predecessors. The sounds of the gala faded, replaced by the echo of our footsteps on stone. His beta, Rowan, materialized silently beside us. Rowan, Darius said without turning, ensure we are not disturbed, and compile a complete dossier on Emma Thorne, family, pack affiliation, history. I want it within the hour. Already underway, my lord, Rowan replied, his voice a gravelly baritone. I initiated the inquiry the moment you began crossing the ballroom with singular intent. It will be on your desk by the time you reach your chambers. Efficient as always. There was a thread of familiar warmth in Darius's tone. To me, he said, Rowan has been at my side for 200 years. His foresight is occasionally irritating. Someone must prevent you from initiating diplomatic incidents at social functions, Rowan noted dryly. That demonstration will be the primary discourse in every territory by dawn. The council will have opinions. The council perpetually has opinions, Darius said. I rarely find them compelling. He stopped before a heavy oak door carved with lupin motifs. This is sufficient, old friend. I will call if required. Rowan's dark, assessing eyes rested on me for a brief moment, protective, curious, analytical, before he nodded and took a post against the far wall, a watchful sentinel granting the illusion of privacy. Darius opened the door and gestured for me to precede him. The room beyond was clearly a study, but unlike any I had seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the moon-drenched forest bordering the palace grounds. The space was lined with shelves bearing volumes that looked centuries old, and a generous fire crackled in a large stone hearth, casting dancing light over rich rugs and dark wood. The air smelled of aged leather, parchment, and that distinctive, clean scent of cedar and night that was uniquely his. "Sit," Darius said, moving to a sideboard where crystal decanters held amber liquid. "You appear as though you could benefit from a fortifying drink." I perched on the edge of a deep leather sofa, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Now, in the quiet intimacy of this room, the staggering reality of the past hour began to settle upon me like a physical weight. The Alpha King had kissed me. Before the entire assembly, before David. Why? The question escaped before I could temper it. Darius poured 2 measures of whiskey, brought one to me, then settled in the armchair opposite. He had shed his jacket and rolled his sleeves up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked by the pale silver trails of old scars, testaments to a violent history. "Why, what specifically? Why did I kiss you? Why did I remove you from the gala? Why am I here instead of performing my duties as host?" "All of it," I said quietly. "Any of it. I am inconsequential, and you are. If you describe yourself as inconsequential once more, I shall become genuinely vexed," he interrupted, though his tone lacked true anger. "You assert it as fact when it is clearly an assessment you have absorbed from others." "Whose assessment? Your former mate's, your pack's?" I took a small sip of the whiskey to avoid answering. It was smooth, leaving a trail of warmth that steadied me slightly. "Does it matter?" I finally asked. "Yes." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his focus entirely on me. "Because whoever convinced you of your negligible worth was profoundly mistaken, and I wish to know whose understanding requires correction." A startled, slightly unsteady laugh escaped me. "You cannot simply revise people's perceptions. There are structures, hierarchies. My father was a pack guard who fell when I was 12. My mother works in a textile mill. My wolf is so subdued I can scarcely maintain a shift for an hour without exhaustion. These are realities, not perceptions." "Realities presented without context," he countered. "Your father died shielding his pack during the territorial wars. I recall the report. He defeated 3 rival wolves before he fell. Your mother raised 2 daughters alone while laboring full-time, and both of you not only survived but built lives despite the absence of pack support. As for your wolf," he paused, his silver gaze studying me with unnerving intensity. "What if she is not weak? What if she is merely different, and no one has ever bothered to discern the nature of that difference?" His words struck a chord deep within, a resonant note in a place I had long shielded behind walls of resignation. "You know nothing of me," I said, but the protest lacked conviction. "Not yet," he agreed, "but I would like to, if you will permit it." The fire popped and crackled, the only sound in the room. Beyond the thick walls, the distant melody of the gala persisted, a world of performance continuing unabated. Here, we existed in a separate pocket of time and space outside the normal rules. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally, meeting his gaze directly. Darius set his glass down with deliberate care. "In truth, I am still ascertaining that, but when I caught your scent in that hall, something within me recognized something within you." "My wolf," he shook his head, a faint, wry smile touching his lips. "My wolf, who has shown no true interest in anyone for decades, nearly surged to the surface. That is not a phenomenon I can disregard. This is not some preordained mate bond," I said, skepticism coloring my tone. "Such tales were romantic fables used to prettify political arrangements." "I do not know," he said, and the frank uncertainty was more compelling than any grand romantic declaration. "Perhaps, perhaps not, but I know you looked upon me without agenda, you spoke without guile, and when I kissed you," his eyes darkened slightly with the memory. When I kissed you, it felt like discovering something I had not consciously sought but had been awaiting nonetheless. Heat crept up my neck. You scarcely know me, then allow me the opportunity to learn. He stood and moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit woods. In profile, he appeared carved from granite, ancient and immutable. Remain, not merely for tonight. I am not attempting to seduce you, despite what the gossips will doubtless claim, but stay at the palace for a time. Allow us to determine if this connection possesses substance or if it was merely a moment of vivid distraction at a tiresome event. I have employment, I said automatically, an apartment, responsibilities. Your employer has been contacted and is amenable to a temporary leave. Your residence will be maintained, all can be arranged. He turned to face me, his expression carefully neutral. Unless you do not wish to stay, if you prefer to return to your life and consign this evening to memory, I will arrange transport and ensure you are not harassed. I will not compel you, Emma, the choice is yours. The offer was laid bare, stark in its simplicity. The sensible path was clear, return to my quiet, predictable existence, my careful invisibility. It was safe, it was sane. Yet I thought of David's face in the moment of that kiss, the shock, the dawning regret. I thought of Sophia's condescending sweetness, of a lifetime of being looked through. I thought of the startling rightness of Darius's lips against mine, of my wolf's unexpected, vibrant response of being called real. For how long? I asked. Something that might have been relief flickered in his eyes. A month. Grant me 1 month to persuade you that you are not insignificant, that your value is not dictated by pack politics or pedigree or the vigor of your shift. If after that time I have not succeeded, I will personally return you to your home and apologize for the disruption. Do we have an agreement, Emma? I looked at his extended hand, scarred, strong, offering an unknown path. Every rational instinct screamed that this was insanity, a path to certain heartbreak, a fantasy doomed to shatter, but I had spent a lifetime being rational, cautious, small. Perhaps it was time to be something else. I placed my hand in his. 1 month. His fingers closed around mine, warm and certain. His smile was like dawn breaking, unexpected and transformative. 1 month, he affirmed. Then he lifted my hand and pressed a kiss to my knuckles, a gesture that felt like both a promise and a challenge. Outside, the gala played on. But in this room, with my hand enclosed in the Alpha King, I felt the first fissure appear in the walls I had built around a heart too often bruised. I should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in a very long time, I felt profoundly, undeniably alive.